So, hi everyone. My name is Leah Parkhill Riley, and I'm the practice lead for coaching at the Roundtable. I'm also an executive coach myself. I really want to welcome you today to our Ask the Expert panel, all around tough topics. So, how do you manage real life and others when things aren't so okay? I know personally, I am really looking forward to this topic. I have a number of clients and even myself that I'm sure there's a lot that we'll be able to glean out of this. So just want to run through a few items. Let's move it to the next slide, Claudia. So at the roundtable, we are quite committed to making an impact. And so as part of our commitment to ongoing reconciliation, we've partnered with a charitable organization named Inspire. Inspire is a national Indigenous registered charity that invests in education for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for the long-term benefit of the individuals and their communities. So to honor the legacy of Kamloops 2015, or 215, we're striving to provide 215 university scholarships over the next 5 years. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can contact Claudia, and her information is there on the slide, and you can also find the information on our website. Thank you, Claudia, for putting that in the chat. Before I move on, Claudia, I do want to acknowledge that in Toronto, we are the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And Toronto is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Okay. Thanks, Erica. So just a few more housekeeping items. As this is a webinar, you can already tell your cameras are off, your mics are muted. Don't worry, we can't hear your dog. But we would love to encourage interaction. So if the chat is open, as is the Q&A, we will be monitoring it. Glenn is awesome at seeing those questions come in. And so please feel free as questions come up. Ask them in there, and we really want to have that interactive experience. We're also recording the webinar, so there will be an email following, a few days following with links and more details. Okay, so for those of you who are new to us at the Roundtable, we're an organization that really helps other organizations move beyond the individualism of hero leaders and teams and culture to really step beyond that to unleash collective impact. And the way that we do that is through our methods of coaching. So we have a number of group coaching, team coaching, and one-on-one coaching programs that we work with our clients on. We'll have more to talk about that at the end of the slide, but at the end of this session, but I want to move us along into the actual conversation. So one more introduction, housekeeping, not really housekeeping, more as a handover. I'd like to introduce our fearless leader, Glenn Roberts McCabe. Glenn like shine, not Glaine like rain, for those of you who don't know her. Glenn is the founder and president of the Roundtable, certified executive coach, and has over 30 years of experience leading teams in private, public, and not-for-profit. Glenn, over to you.
Thanks, Leah, and welcome everybody. I am super excited to be having this conversation today. I don't know if excited is the right word given the topic, but it has been on our minds for a very long time that we needed to create some space to talk about this. Those of you who follow me on LinkedIn might have caught a post I did I don't know, it was probably about a year ago when I was kind of going through something, and I made the comment that, as a leader, you got to look after everybody else's trauma, but you're supposed to leave your own at home. And I think there's something about leadership and the demands that are placed on us as leaders, and also just in our lives. It's really complex and complicated. And so I know we've got a lot of folks on the call today coming at this topic from very different angles. We've got a lot of our alumni members. Welcome, everybody. So maybe some people, leaders that are new to the Roundtable community. Extra welcome to all of you. We're thrilled that you're here. And those of you in talent that are supporting professionals. And of course, we've got our friends in the coaching community that are here too. So it's going to be a wide-ranging conversation today. We are going to explore mental health through kind of two main avenues. One is going to be really, how do we support others? And that includes beyond just our workplace, right? Our families. I think we don't leave ourselves at home when we come into work, and we don't leave We don't leave work at home often when we're at home. And so how do we look at this holistically in terms of thinking about supporting others? And then the other piece is, how do we support ourselves, and how do we know when things just aren't right, and what are some of the things we need to consider and know and do? So I'm thrilled today to be joined with three people: Christine Birch, Ainsley Law, and Lisa Sear, bracket Sibley, who are here to kind of share their wisdom and experience. I do want to say, given the topics, I just want to say to everybody, look after yourselves in this topic, because I don't know how you're coming into this conversation. I don't want this to be too raw for anybody. So if at any point you need to pop off, that's totally okay. But know that this is a safe space, and we're here to support you in whatever way we can. Like with all our formats, I will be starting the ball rolling with some questions for the group. And then, of course, we want you to lean in with your questions. This is the whole point of what we do, is to help you get the questions that you need answered. So you can either put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. It's really up to you where you want to throw them, and I'll keep my eyes on it. So I'm going to get the panelists actually to tell you all a little bit about themselves, as opposed to reading boring bios. So I've asked each panelist to share a little bit about how they got involved in the work they're doing, kind of their origin story about coming into this work, and then one hope that they have for all of you that are attending today's session. So maybe I'll get, where do I start? Let's get Lisa, you can kick us off, and then I'll go to Christine, and then I'll come over to you, Ainsley.
Great. Thanks, Klein. I'm really honored to be here today. So thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here with all of you. This is the first time I'm really sharing my why. So this is a big deal for me today. So thank you. So I experienced the worst loss a parent can have, and I am finding a way to create meaning in my life through connection. Just over 2 years ago, I lost my 16-year-old son, Nathan, to suicide. There were no obvious signs. He was an excellent student, had a large group of friends, loving family. He was a competitive gymnast, and the night before he passed, he was studying for a chemistry test later that week. So a regular teenage boy, by all accounts. Thanks for the love. So I came home from work ready to take him to gymnastics, and I found him. So in that moment, my world stopped. How was I going to survive the unsurvivable when truthfully, I didn't really want to? So although not immediately apparent, what I realized is that the only way for me to survive this was to do work that has deep meaning for me. And while I don't believe there's any meaning in the loss of Nathan, I do believe that there can be meaning in my life. And being a mom has always been my most important role and my greatest joy. I am still a mom to 2 boys, although the act of mothering looks different than I planned. Being a mom means being fully present and there for my son, Gavin, who is living. And for Nathan, it means finding ways to honor him. For me, that's about helping people navigate challenges through connection. Coaching through life loss and leadership is a way to help people connect to all parts of themselves so they can grieve fully and live fully. Nathan showed compassion for his loved ones and was always the friend who was there to listen and offer support. And through this work, I'm able to carry his heart forward. Thanks. One hope I have for attendees today is to take one piece of information away to start to change the conversation around grief and loss.
I love that, Lisa. Thank you so much for your candor and your vulnerability and sharing that story. Really appreciate it. Okay, Christine, over to you.
Thanks. And just before I go, can we just give Lisa a moment for like an applaud, sharing your story with us? Thank you so much. Thank you. And I need a minute to get myself together so I can say something. Thanks, Lisa. So I'm Christine Birch, and I came into mental health unknowingly and not wanting to. Shortly after I was born, my mom was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And as a child with a parent with a mental illness, I didn't know how to help. I saw her struggling. I wanted to be there for her. Being the youngest child, too, I have much older siblings. The caregiving responsibility fell to me. And so I spent a lot of time caring for my mom and really not being a kid myself. And so I was so frustrated with not being able to fix her, is how I saw this. Like I needed to be able to help her overcome this. And I couldn't. And I had the wrong mindset of what it meant for her unwellness. And so I got into mental health, working frontline mental health, and then 15 years at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And I had moved out of frontline mental health work and then working more in HR and OD and working with leaders. And what I realized is that I loved working with individuals and helping people. I'm an executive coach now, but helping people work through mental health issues. But when I work with leadership, I touch so many more people and be able to make a greater impact. So I have been teaching mental health in the workplace for a number of years now, and I get to do this globally. And for me, my hope is that people come to understand that somebody who's experiencing and living with a mental health disorder is a fully productive member of society. And if you are working, that does not mean you have to leave work. And so my hope is that for those of you who are in leadership positions listening to this, that you have some takeaways on how you can best support employees who may be struggling in the workplace so that people feel like their only hope or their only choice is not to leave, but to be able to stay at work. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. And thank you for sharing that story. And I think this is the other reality, right? It's how do we support people? You know, sometimes it's not our mental health, it's what's happening around us and within our ecosystem that is, you know, the thing that we're trying to navigate. Okay, Ainsley, over to you. Share your origin story in this work and your hope for today for everybody.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here. It's such a privilege. And thank you, Lisa and Christine. It takes a lot of courage to be so authentic and raw about your stories. When it comes to my why, it's very personal and deep-rooted in my story so far in my lifetime. I confronted mental health in a way that I didn't comprehend for a very long time. I was 13 when I was diagnosed with anorexia and in the hospital, which followed years of just in and out of day programs and hospital admissions to then going to a rehabilitation center. And through that process, it was very draining and exhausting and scary. And you think you're just going to go in and come out and be better, but there's so much more underneath. And you're healing this relationship with yourself and you're witnessing the grief and the pain your family's also going through. And going through that process and not thinking I was gonna make it out or be where I am today or see a future for myself, it's very fulfilling and rewarding to now pursue a career of wanting to help not change people's lives because that's up for other people to figure out, that's their journey, but to hopefully navigate and support in that. And I feel something that I realized in my journey was sometimes you just need someone to listen and be there with you in it. They can't fix it. That's up to me. And if I want to get better, I have to get better. And it's something I really pushed me into mental health was I want to be that listening shoulder or someone that can just tell you that you're human too. There's nothing wrong with you, but you may feel a little bit broken now. So what can we do with that? And seeing not the best parts of our systems and the systematic barriers. And it just made me want to go into mental health so deeply to hopefully make a change where it makes sense with what I can offer to others. And for today's attendees, I hope parents and leaders can walk away knowing that they don't have to have all the answers and they probably never will have all the answers. And mental health is going to be an ongoing conversation and it's not linear and it looks different for everyone. But being able to be present, pushing yourself to listen without judgment and leading with that compassion and authenticity, are some of the most impactful things you can do for those who look up to you as leaders and for your kids that are looking up to you. And that's what I hope people can take away with as well today.
I love that. And so, yeah, let's give these panelists lots of love as we start getting into this topic today. And thank you all for being here. These are real experiences, lived experiences. And, my hope for all of you is my hope for all the sessions we do is that you walk out with something really practical that you can implement immediately in your life, in your work, to start to make a difference. So let's set the stage a little bit. I think I don't want to dwell too much at the macro level, but I think it's important to start the talk about, what do we mean when we talk about mental health? So I pulled up the World Health Organization's definition, which is that they define mental health as a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well, and work well, and contribute to their community. And I think over the last few decades, there has been an increased awareness about the importance of mental health in workplaces. I think there's a lot of campaigns that have been out there that have started to normalize some of the conversation. And I know we've got a number of HR leaders on the call today. So I thought just to kind of, maybe give some pillars for everybody to think about if you support organizations around this work, or if you're in an organization really looking to support broadly, or even as a team lead. Christine, I thought I'd get you to kind of tee us up with, what are maybe 2 or 3 basic things that organizations should consider and consider implementing as a foundation for a mentally healthy workplace.
Thanks. I think one of the first things I'm going to say is there needs to be a want or a desire. I'm going to just be really blunt right off the bat. I see a lot of companies give lip service to this because it's something we should do. And if it's something you should do, it's not going to be done well. I'm just going to start you there. Yeah. And so there needs to be a want and a desire, and there has to be support from the top. So many times I see my HR peeps trying to start it from HR, and I don't have support from the top, and that makes it really challenging. You're going to hit a roadblock each time. So I need support from the top. I need the want and desire. I need clear policies and procedures around mental health issues. I also need to know what do we have? What are our resources? What are our accommodation practices look like? And how is it clear to people? I think one of the biggest things we need going into leadership, I'm sorry, MBAs don't teach us how to support people with mental health issues. This isn't common sense. I'm going to just say it's not common sense. We spend a lot of time teaching leaders to be empathetic and compassionate and caring. And it's a rub because leaders feel that means I'm weak and I'm easily swayed. And so there's this discord or disconnect between the two. Education and training is paramount. You need to have training and education for your employees and for your leaders so they know what to do. You need to measure the KPIs of the organization. How do I know if I'm actually making a difference? And I think one of the things for me is wellness programs or wellness initiatives cannot be standalone. So they need to be embedded. You need a mental health strategy that is embedded into your strategic plan. How is this helping the organization drive forward your mission, your purpose, and your goals? So those would be a couple of things that I would start with.
I love that. And I love your real talk on it. I don't know, Lisa, I know you've been in HR for years yourself. Is there anything that you would add to this from an organizational perspective? Oh, Lisa's like, where do I?
There we go. Sorry, I'm going to get myself off mute. I think, there's so much talk now about treating people as individuals, but then we have these policies that we try and broad brush and apply to everybody. So I think, I have a particular interest in grief and loss. And I think when it comes to policies around bereavement leave, and it's really kind of throwing the policies out the door and just sitting with the person and treating them as a human, because grief and loss is a mental health issue. It is, and it will become a prolonged one if it's not processed. So yeah,
I love that. Yeah, I mean, that's the challenge with policies, and we do it across all kinds of different things, not just mental health, but we create these sort of broad brush things. Okay, so let's bring it into the manager role, because that's sort of at the organizational level, things for our talent partners and friends and senior leaders who are on this call to think about. As we look at the manager level, there's been a lot of emphasis lately, and I will say I got a little triggered a few years ago when I saw somebody advertising a trauma-informed manager workshop, like leader as, being trauma-informed. And I got a little triggered because I felt like, oh my gosh, like, isn't leadership hard enough? And now I have to, be a psychologist to figure out how to do this. And so I think, let's start to break this down and look at this through different lens areas. When we think about our role as managers and leaders, what is our role and what are some of the basic signs we can just be aware of and looking for, and things that we can think about. So Lisa, I'm going to circle back and start with you, because I think grief touches everybody. It's going to touch all of us at some point. All of us are going to face some kind of grief. I remember my dad died when I was about, I don't know, 4 years into the business. And it probably took me a year before I could cope, and I was dealing with my mom Skyping me every time she saw me online because she was processing. So I was trying to help her process her grief. And it really, your brain is not, it's not functioning level. So talk to us about, this. You touched on the 2 week bereavement period. Like, what are some of the things you kind of want to debunk, the myths around grief? And then what are some of the signs that you need to watch for, maybe with an employee who's going through it that, needs more support than maybe they're asking for?
Yeah, thanks. As you had given us some of these questions to prepare in advance, I have a fairly long list of myths, but I'll just go through a few of them as I was writing and thinking, wow, there are a lot. So I think the first one is this idea of getting back to, like, just getting back at it. You get the 2 weeks and then you're back at it. And that really implies that after loss, you can return to life before the loss and pick up where you left off. And the truth is, there is no getting back to, there is only learning to live with. And so, people going through loss, there are secondary losses in addition to the primary loss. So there could be a loss of your identity, loss of your routine, loss of self, loss of peer group, loss of other relationships. So it accumulates. And so getting back at it just doesn't happen. And it also implies that with enough distraction, you can just move on. So just get back at work, a couple of weeks, we'll get you back into the old routine, and, then you can move on. And the truth is too that grief waits. So while it's impossible to process all of the parts of loss all at once, and some distraction is protective for us, too much distraction will detract from healing. And what works as a distraction in the beginning won't work long term. And so that's sometimes where you get into some alcohol abuse issues can potentially emerge, or some other problems, because like one drink works for a couple weeks, and then that one drink needs to turn into two because it's not quite numbing the pain enough. So really the only way forward is through it. And I think workplaces would benefit overall by working with employees to really focus on what will work for them in their unique situation. And the last point I'll make here is bringing up the loss will remind the griever of the loss, and it will make it harder for them. So they've already been through the hardest thing. So you mentioning it doesn't make them think about it anymore, because pretty much guaranteed that they're always thinking about it anyway. It's always just right under the surface. And it, talking about it will help the griever feel seen. So I think those are the highlights. I have a few more that I can offer
great
after.
insights. And I think about, one of the reasons that this really triggered for me, we work with a lot of type A personalities at the roundtable, right? High potential leaders that are just type A, go, 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 drive right through it. And I personally had the experience of coaching people who are signed up for coaching because there's a behavior at work that they're not, it needs to be finessed. We need to kind of sand off the rough edges. But the relationships are what's starting to suffer with their manager. There's a manager rift that's happened, and through the unpacking through coaching, have discovered that there was a loss experience. And that loss could have been death, but it also could have been things like divorce, or it could have been a diagnosis of somebody with an illness in a very serious way. And the person's trying to power through because they've had their 2-week leave and now they're just trying to power through. And I loved what you said about grief. Grief is going to come back. Like if you're distracting yourself from it, it's going to come back. And I think some of the things that managers, from my perspective, can just check in on is if the person's pattern of behavior is so different than it was before, explore that. There's something probably sitting there that you're maybe they're presenting as being okay, but they're actually not okay. Okay, Christine, what would you add to this? Some additional sort of things that you can see that somebody's struggling. What are some of the signs we need to just kind of be aware of?
So in the workplace, there's a number of signs. Before I go there, I want to illustrate this through a story. Maybe this might be helpful. A number of years ago, when I was working frontline mental health, I had a very high caseload of clients. I was feeling very overwhelmed. My area of expertise became those who are living with borderline personality disorder. I had no formal training in that. So I will say that was boots on the ground, learning how to deal with it. And at home, my mom was very unwell. I was getting married. My dad had just been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I had a neighbor who was quite unwell, who became very fixated with me and spent a year trying to kill me. So I had a few things that were going on with me. And as I was going into work, I didn't realize how unwell I was. I would show up, I would do my work, I would smile, I'm on the gardener. And there was many a times I would think, if I just did about 150 right off of this near the exhibition, what would that be like? What would this pain be like? And I didn't even realize as a mental health professional, the space that I was in. And it wasn't until I was visiting a client of mine who was living with schizophrenia, her tea kettle went off. She was making me a cup of tea and I hit the ceiling and she said to me, Christine, I don't know what is going on with you, but you are not okay. You need to get some help. This is several times I've noticed. She says, you have all the hallmarks of trauma. I myself, as a professional, had no idea what was going on with me. I was experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder and didn't even know. As a leader, my leader recognized something. This is going to be the first thing I'm going to say for leaders in the workplace is recognize, as Glenn said, a change. If there's a change in behavior, there's a pattern of change that's not regular for this person, check in. So people saw that I was not myself, yet no one said anything to me. It was a client who said something to me to create that awareness. And so it was afterwards, I went to my leader and I said, what is going on? Like, have you noticed something? And she said, yes, we've all noticed something is not right with you. You are off. And I was like, well, was anyone going to say anything? And she said, no, because you're the tough one in the team. And we thought if we brought it up, it would make you upset. And I was like, well, ignoring it is making it worse because I had no idea I was coming into work not doing my best. Mm-hmm. And so recognize what you're seeing. The second thing for leaders is prevention. Now, I can't prevent somebody from becoming mentally unwell because there are things and factors and variables I'm not responsible for and I can't control, but I can control the environment in which you work. And so what's my trust factor like? What's my relationship like? How safe and courageous have I created this environment for you to feel like safe, that I've created safety for you to come to speak to me with an issue, and how much courage do you have to be able to bring that issue forward? So courage and safety need to go hand in hand. It's not just kind of a one-sided thing. I also need to be mindful of my language. How am I talking about mental health issues in the workplace? How am I referring to people? Am I doing one of those like, oh gosh, like Lisa's been off for 2 weeks already. Like, just come on, suck it up. We got so much work that needs to get done. Like, when are they getting back? So other team members hear that they are not going to be in a hurry to tell you about any of their issues or challenges because they don't want to be judged by you. So the prevention piece, just being aware of stigma, how we speak, our thoughts control our behaviors and our words. So being really mindful of those things. And then the last is support. As leaders, I never want you to be a psychologist or a mental health professional. I want you to be human. I want you to have empathy and understanding. When you see a change, don't come at me with a performance management approach, which is fix it and move on. Stop it, fix it, move on. I'd like to have the conversation pre-performance management. And that is, hey, I've noticed that there's something I've noticed a change in your behavior. I've noticed this. I've noticed you've come into work late 3 times in the last 2 weeks. This isn't like you. I'd like to talk about what's going on because I'm concerned. I need to know you're concerned about what you're seeing versus this is a performance I'm going to be disciplined for. So being able to change the narrative of the conversation in the approach and our tone. Because when I'm frustrated, I'm going to come at you with it full on, like, hey, I need you to kind of get back into things because it's falling behind and now it's impacting your team. When I'm struggling, I don't care that it's impacting my team. I need to take care of me first, then I can take care of my team. And I need you to acknowledge that for me first before the team. So how we approach the support piece is crucial. And then if somebody is off, a lot of times, and my HR peeps will know this here, a lot of times when somebody's off, the leaders are like hands off. I'm not calling you. That's HR's role or OC Health or Health and Safety. It's someone else's role or the union. It's not mine. I don't feel comfortable calling you because I'm not supposed to bother you at home. I want you to call at home. I want you to talk to them to see how they're doing, not where's work at or when are you coming back. So there's like really structured, specific conversations that helps the person come back to work faster because they know that you're going to be supportive when they get back. So recognition, prevention, support.
Love that. And, Christine, I think so much about like in our work, a big focus of our work is helping leaders sort of identify what their natural strengths are when it comes to leadership and what their liabilities are. And often they're kind of connected together, and so if you're a big results driver, maybe you're not as sensitive, maybe you don't have as much empathy. And so I always think too, and I remember doing a test years ago where I scored a 2 out of 15 on a sensitivity scale. And I'm like, wait, but I'm an empathetic person, but I miss cues all the time. And so one of the things that, can I get better at that? Sure, I can. But I also know when I'm in a stress mode, that's a blind spot for me. And so who on my team is highly tuned to people's feelings, is highly connected. And that's what I use. So I think also when you talk about support, as managers, also, you do not have to do this alone. You do not need to be the superhero. Think about who else can you be tapping into to help you bring a well-rounded support network to your team, but also to yourself as you're having to pay attention to these cues. So I love what you've just added there. Okay, Ainsley, you bring a really sort of different take and a unique perspective to this conversation. There's a lot of folks on this call that are parents. I already saw people could really relate. Their daughters are going through similar things that you've navigated or been navigating. And I would love to hear from your perspective. Youth mental health, we are hearing about it constantly. We are hearing that it is on, that there is, on the rise post-COVID. I feel like it's really almost exploded. And so I'm curious from your perspective, what do you feel like parents need to be paying attention to when it comes to their kids' mental health? Are there things that you feel that are quite easy to miss that we should just know about and think about?
No, for sure. I'd love to share a personal example to kind of go into the question. Before I was diagnosed at 13, it wasn't that the struggles just happened at 13. It was way before that. Like now, thankfully, with my awareness and working through and healing, I can pinpoint back to when my parents first got divorced when I was 5, 6-ish, and experiencing anxiety, struggling with sleeping, not able to process my emotions, what led into other issues that I struggled with in silence, depression. But it doesn't mean that it always looks on the outside. It's easy to hide it and have it all on the inside. And it wasn't until I was physically visible that I was now malnourished that, okay, we got to get this girl to the hospital, which is great that I got the support, but where are those early interventions or other stages that you can catch this? And I feel it's hard to say specifically a certain list of, oh, this is what you have to look out for your child, or this is what you need, because every child's different, every family's different. We all come from a different place. And it'd be unrealistic to say that I would have been for myself just in my room, avoiding family, when really I was in a lot of clubs. I was in soccer. I was doing great in classes. I don't think you would look at my person and think, oh, she might be depressed or struggling with her body image or have unhealed trauma that she needs to talk about. And I think a lot of points that Christine touched on beautifully, you can also apply as a parent to your child and questioning what is the space or the messages you are conveying to your kid, not even directly, but subconsciously. And I think another point that you can build off that is questioning as a parent your relationship with yourself. Because I feel like a lot of times our world teaches us to disconnect from our body and our minds and to not trust our intuition. Because at the end of the day, you are the parent, you are the caregiver, you probably have a good sense of what your kid's normal is. And it can be uncomfortable and scary to see that there might be something wrong, or even look at yourself and be like, am I influencing that? And I think a huge part is to really listen to you. And if you think there's something wrong, there might be something wrong. So it doesn't hurt to go investigate that. And I think one other point I would love to touch on, because I think there's so many points you can go off and list and give tips for, but is it's you're in a different period of your life than your child is, and the experiences they've lived up to is what they've lived so far, and the experiences you have lived is what you lived. So if they're sharing something, or oh, my friend wasn't the nicest to me, that might not seem like a huge big thing to you because you have all this work, all this other stuff, but that's a huge point in their current life right now. And I would push you when you might notice yourself maybe dismissing or neglecting, or oh, okay, like it's not like, I acknowledged it, but maybe you didn't acknowledge it enough for what they needed in that period of time. And there's always these little cues, and it's so important to recognize that you both have different worldviews, both have different experiences, but they're both challenging in different ways. And it's important to have that space that you can both be yourselves in your current life experiences. And those are some tips I would say, and push parents on the call or caregivers to be aware of or mindful of when having those conversations, or noticing your kids might be going down different pathways that could be scary to look at.
Oh, Ainsley, I love that. And I just want to say Gen Z always gets a bad rap. And to me, we are in great hands. Look at this young woman here. Like, it's getting me all choked up because I got a 21-year-old. But anyway, okay, let's go. Pull it together, line. Okay, so folks, what questions are coming up for you? Feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. I'll be watching them. But let's start to get into how we can open up some of these conversations, because I think this is where often we get stuck. And I know as a parent, like I know I had intuitions on stuff with my daughter when she was younger, and I just didn't know how to approach it. And so instead, I avoided it, or I tried to make it better. I tried to like gloss it over, or distract, or all those things. And so, Christine, I'd love you. Let's start with you. What are some basic things we can do to open up the conversations, phrases we can use with somebody at work where we feel something's going on, but we're worried about maybe stepping on a boundary or getting to, making them uncomfortable? I think these are the things that hold us back. What would you say? What advice do you have?
Yeah, this is the $1 million question. I wish I had $1 for every time somebody asked me, how do I start this conversation? Because it doesn't matter where in the world I'm teaching this. This is the question people ask. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. So before you even start the conversation, I want to make sure your mindset is in the right place. And so what happens is we're emotionally triggered when this happens. We are problem solvers. You want to solve someone's problem. Somebody tells you something, your first innate response is, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to fix this, solve this for this person? Because you shared it with me, I need to fix it. That's what I was talking about as being a kid trying to fix everything. And that carried me into leadership and everywhere else until I realized it's not my responsibility to fix things. And Ainsley, I love that you had said that. We can't fix things for other people. There needs to be a desire. So I need to know, am I emotionally triggered going into this conversation? And what's my mindset? So first thing is I'm going to need to emotionally regulate myself. And I want to give you a really quick biohack, or it's a biohack, a neurobiohack on how to quickly get yourself untriggered. Curiosity. You cannot be curious and have a negative emotion at the same time. And you know where I learned that? Not in the therapeutic world, in coaching. I think everyone should learn to like coaching techniques. It's the best. Okay. So be curious. So why? So if my kid says, I have an issue with my friends, somebody said something, instead of saying, oh, it's no big deal. Like, look, you have lots of friends. Somebody shared something. My first thing should be curiosity. Like, oh, what made them say that? Well, how did you like, what does that mean to you? How did that make you feel? So I want to be curious, go into the conversation, and I want to use open-ended questions. Not, is everything okay? Are you okay? Because we give rote answers. Your house burnt down yesterday. How are you feeling? Fine. Good. Thanks. Move on. So ask open-ended questions. All open-ended questions begin with who, what, why, when, where, and how, and which. Out of all those, there's one we should never start a high stakes conversation with. We know the answer. Which one would that be? Why? If you want to piss somebody, yes, Jen Parks. If you want to piss somebody off, start with a why. Why did that happen? Why did you think that? Why did you do that? All those are defensive. We get into something I call the defense and attack conversation, which makes no one feel safe or courageous to share. So start with what? What is probably the best open-ended question to start with? Start with something that you've noticed if you're in the workplace. So I'm going to go Ainsley. Ainsley, thanks for meeting with me today. I wanted to talk to you about something that I've noticed. And then kind of little what I said before. I've noticed over the last 2 weeks that you've come into work late twice. I got to say, Ainsley, it's not like you. I want to go to a strength this person has. It's not like you. Typically, you're somebody who comes into work early and you stay until things get done. Not that I'm promoting for you to stay 12 hours a day, but when I see this change in behavior for you, I'm concerned about what it might mean, and I want to talk about what's going on for you. So what's impacting your ability? This is my $1,000,000 question, but your tone and question have to be correlated. What's impacting your ability to get to work on time? And then pause, let them answer. Okay, so mindset, emotional regularity, start with curiosity, and we want to be compassionate in the conversation. Ask a what question. That would be my formula. And I am going to give you a cheat sheet at the end of today on how to enter into this conversation.
Beautiful. Thanks, Christine. Those are great. Okay, so Lisa, I know death is one of those ones nobody wants to talk about. Don't should I add? And you mentioned this earlier, like, you know, should I mention Nathan's name or not? Should I, you know, all of these things we sort of really kind of wrestle with. For you, sort of, are there some phrases and kind of key things to say, not say? How should people enter into this conversation? I think, Christine, you just got a great overall framework, but if we go a little bit deeper, what would you add to this?
Yeah, I love that, Christine. The curiosity versus judgment is so important. Even when you're thinking about yourself, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Replace that with, I wonder why I'm feeling this way. This is different for me. So using that same approach on yourself too. So grief needs to be witnessed. Like, one of the foundational things about grief is that it really needs to be witnessed. And so mirror back to them their reality. So when you meet somebody and you don't know what to say, I don't even know what to say to you right now, but I am so sorry. So just meet them where they're at. Could say, if they say this really sucks, yes, it does. Or I'm so devastated. Of course you are. How could you be anything but devastated right now? Be willing to sit in the discomfort. So, you know, we often, as you've said, and Christine mentioned too, and Ainsley, like, we want to make it better. We want to fix it. And we don't like seeing people we care about in pain, right? Like, we want to make it better for them. We're good human beings. But the best thing you can do is just show up and listen, hold their hand, just be with them. Sitting with somebody in grief is really difficult and uncomfortable, and it is also immensely connecting. And send a text support just to offer you know, words of encouragement, or say, you know, I'm just thinking about you right now. Don't expect a response. If they're open to getting any support materials, and you say, you know, I read a really good book once, would you like me to send it to you? And they say, yeah, that'd be great. Send it, and don't follow up and ask them if they read it. Just send it and let it be. And no unsolicited advice ever when it comes to grief. They don't need to be fixed. They just need to be witnessed. And don't compare. I know how you feel. No, you don't. So it's really all around just showing up and being with people and not trying to fix it, because it's not something that can ever be fixed. Asking them, so are you feeling better? I can guarantee you that there is no better without their person in the world. So they will never be better. They just are learning to carry it. Ask them about their person. If you didn't know them, say, "Oh, tell me, what were they like?" Say their name. You miss saying their name, so say their name. If you knew them, share a favorite memory of them. So just be willing to be uncomfortable with them. It will be hugely connecting and will make them feel seen.
Love those. That's so, so, so incredibly powerful. And there's so much love going on in the chat. I don't know if you guys are catching it, but yeah, great tips. Okay, so Ainsley, let's talk about our kids. I remember a teenager who wouldn't talk to me. So what are some of the what are some of the ways we can open up conversations and maybe some pitfalls that parents don't even realize they're doing that we can avoid? And I think you touched on a couple of them a little bit earlier, but what would you like to kind of reinforce or dive into further?
No, for sure. I think again too, like Christine, Lisa, they touched on amazing points, and even guidelines or frameworks you can follow, because it comes down to recognizing your emotions as a parent. Fear is a huge one. It can be very consuming, and fear can also just be scary to name. So it's having that courage to sit in and acknowledge it, and also be vulnerable in that space with your child that's not suffocating or overbearing. And I feel with that, it's always easier said than done. Again, you got to recognize you're human too. Your child, you are living in this world for the first time. You're figuring it out as you go. So it's difficult to say you can follow A, B, C. I said what I observed. I said my I statements. It might not always go like that, and that's okay. But I think it's also having the willingness and the openness to grow and in your approaches. And I feel like a huge thing that I found helpful in my journey and relationship with my parents was learning when I was speaking for my parents to be able to listen more than speak. It's overwhelming. Half the time, I don't even know what's going on with me or what I'm feeling or what I'm experiencing. And I feel like accepting the silence, being okay in the silence, and being uncomfortable together creates so much more room to have more discussions and conversations. And I would push parents or caregivers or those of you have friends who are going through things, be okay to just say your question, show that curiosity, and just sit there. Because sometimes that's when you're able to really think deeper and feel like you can share more. And I think a huge thing too with whoever your audience is, who you're trying to navigate these conversations with, especially for parents with their kids, is realizing that mental health stigma still exists and it's very prominent. And trying to consider, oh, what about their environment? What are they around? What might be influencing them to think that they can't speak to me or there's something wrong? Are they getting the education? Are they aware? So I think it's also bringing that to play of it's not like everyone thinks there's a free space, you can come bring your emotions with you. And I would say those are some additional things to build off of Lisa and Christine, who brought beautiful ways of trying to provoke conversations.
Christine, you want to
Yeah, I
add?
chime in. Something I was thinking about when we get stuck as parents or as leaders or as friends and we don't know what to say or what to do for someone, one of my favorite questions is what would be most helpful to you? Which is a lot different than what can I do for you?
Right.
Big distinction between
Yeah.
those two.
Love that, Christine. Love that. That is so powerful. Like if you just ask that, and because then you're also not burdening, how can I help you? Which actually then can becomes a burden now that I've got to figure out, right?
Yeah, I have my own issues now. I got to tell you what I need
What to do, right?
to.
All right. I cannot believe this hour has gone so fast. We have 5 minutes. I want to touch on from the individual lens. I'd love to just spend like maybe a last sort of, rapid fire round with everybody to think about or to share. Because there's some of the Q&A questions that were coming in. A lot of it is like, How do you deal when you know you're struggling? I love, Christine, your story about I didn't even know I was struggling, and I'm actually in this space and I'm struggling. Like, so signs that maybe you need to put the brakes on and slow down, what you should, when you're coming through a traumatic experience like a big loss, Lisa, like you had, what are some things you need to be aware of that you can do for yourself? But there's also a theme about what if you're working with people that are creating, their mental health is creating your own mental health challenges in the workplace. So any sort of perspectives on that? Christine, I'd love you to kick us off, and then we'll go to Lisa or to Ainsley and then Lisa for the last word.
So many questions. I'm like, where do I begin? Where do I begin? One of the questions was around if someone else's mental health is impacting your mental health, what can you do? If I guess one of the first things I would look for is how closely do you work with that person? Like if you're peers and you're close and you can have a conversation and you can start the conversation with this is what I'm experiencing and let them know what you're experiencing. If it's a leader, so if you're a leader and you notice that someone's on the team, their mental health is impacting everyone else, that's your responsibility. So that's your responsibility to have a conversation with them. And if somebody does not want to take accountability for their mental health, your job is not to make them accountable for their mental health. Your job is to make them accountable for the work that they're doing in the environment in which they are doing. So the mental health piece is if someone's mental health is creating that difficult workspace, then your conversation starts with you need to start the conversation with this is what you've noticed, what's going on with them, what do they need, and the expectations that you have and how you can support them. And then I'll just quick ditty because people don't know about this one. If you've had numerous conversations with someone around their mental health and their performance isn't getting better, then you have a choice. If you have an EAP service, then what you can say is, I think that there's something preventing you from being able to do your performance well, and I'm going to refer you to EAP, or we can go down the performance management route. Like, here's options. What do you think would best serve you? And notice my tone. It sounds like I'm being really hard, but my tone is kind. I want to help you. I don't know how. These are our two options. All right, I'll stop there. I could keep talking.
No, I know we could all keep talking and telling you. Ainsley, what would you sort of add in here around self-care, maybe from parenting if you've got a child who's, struggling? What would you say to parents to look after themselves that would actually then have a trickle-down effect? I don't know. What would you add to this conversation?
Yeah, for sure. I think too, if your kid is struggling, there's probably some work that your inner child has not been getting attention or taken care of. And it's difficult to help your kid heal their inner child if yours is still looking for attention and love. And I think sometimes a trauma, we associate it with terrible things happening, but really trauma can happen from not getting your needs met, from not being seen, from not being heard, or not feeling loved or worthy. And I think sometimes there's misconceptions or dismissal there. And I feel like a huge part in parents being able to take care of yourself is hopefully being open and willing, because that's a huge part of it, but being aware of your past experiences and how that can carry into your life and how your children are looking to you from the moment they're out of the womb. Like even in the womb, you can feel your mom's sensations. And if she's going through stress, we're always looking to you for guidance and role model. And yes, that could be a lot of pressure. That can be a lot to take in. And so it's up to you to go back to your childhood and find out how you were hurt. And hopefully that can help navigate the way for both of you in that relationship. And again, it's so much easier said than done, but I would say a huge part is having that patience and that compassion for yourself. And it also might be hard if you're navigating this relationship with your child who's going through a lot and you're probably not getting as much recognition or validation from them. So learning how to find that place where you can validate and recognize the work you're also doing, because you might not feel in the moment, but I promise you, your kids know you love them. Your kids know you're doing the work and they appreciate you so much. Just sometimes when so much is going on, it's so hard to recognize and say that. But I really hope all those parents out there, and I feel for you if you're going through a very hard time with your child, that you can give yourself a pat on the back and know you are doing everything you can. And there's going to be a moment where you feel that you just got to push through this hard hurdle right now.
Oh, Ainsley, that was beautiful. And, I think one of the things I always think about with leadership is the greatest thing you can do for your team is to work on yourself, actually. Like that is the best way you can be a leader is to work on yourself. And I think you just said that so beautifully around parenting. And I always find there's so many parallel lessons as we've been discovering today between parenting and leadership, and they all kind of come together. Okay, Lisa, last word for you. What would you add to this combo?
Yeah, it's been great. I've learned so much from both Christine and Ainsley, so thank you. I guess from a grief perspective, that it is incredibly lonely and isolating, and the path to healing is connection. So even though your friends or colleagues who've experienced loss, they may be back at work or seemingly fine, continue to check in on them and be willing to step into the discomfort of those conversations.
Love it. Well, all three of you have been absolutely incredible. I said to you before we jumped on and let everybody in that this was going to feel like a 5-minute conversation, even though it's been closer to 55 minutes. But thank you for being here with each of us. I'm going to pass it back over to Leah, who's going to just wrap this up a little bit. And yeah, thank you. This was really, really special.
Yeah. I mean, it was profound. There was so much wisdom on the call, and I have seen it in the chat. There needs to be a part two. So I feel like we just scratched the surface. It's been just an hugely important conversation. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Let's just move the slide along. So for Ainsley, Lisa, and Christine have all identified charities that are deeply meaningful to them. And so we wanted to showcase that for all of you who are on the call. Please consider making some sort of contribution that's within your means for one of these three really meaningful charities. So the Teddy Bear Project, Kids Caring for Kids, the Recovery Project, Eating Disorders and Mental Health Support, and jack.org Youth Mental Health. So those will be included in the follow-up notes as well. All right, so as I said, this is such a profound conversation, and it's quite connected to something that's been on our minds for a number of years at the Roundtable. We've been working on a concept about what it means to fully support leaders in a holistic manner beyond the leadership interventions that Glenn was talking about through all of the challenges that we encounter. And so we really are looking at how we can move that into a reality. And if you've been an alumni with us over these years, you know that we create our offerings in collaboration with our community to make sure that it resonates and it makes sense. And so we're looking for HR leaders, senior line leaders who would help us think through what and potentially test our offerings. So if you would like to provide support in that capacity, please drop your name in the chat. I'll be following up with you directly. Again, we'll also have this referenced in the follow-up notes. All right, so thank you for that. And so then I also want to highlight that next month we have a webinar on March 26th. It's part of a new series that we're launching called Talent Talks. So quite relevant if you are in the HR sphere, but of course all alumni are welcome. The inaugural session is with the brilliant and hilariously witty Leanne Davey, who is a psychologist who specializes in team and team dynamics. The combo of Glenn and Leanne is definitely going to be a pairing that is not to be missed. So it's going to be a great conversation. So have that in your calendar. Actually, sorry, we have it showing as the 27th and the 26th on the slide. So we'll have the clear date in the follow-up notes. And so let's move it along. So for those of you who are interested in experiencing a roundtable program to take their leadership journey to the next level, you can do so through what we call our open enrollment program. We only run it twice a year, but due to high demand, we've actually had to create a second cohort for the spring, and we split them by level. So there are 2 spots remaining in the senior manager kind of new director level, and 3 spots remaining in the experienced director VP group. The deadline to register is March 18th. If you have questions, you can reach out to Ashley, Michael, and Claudia will be dropping her email in the chat as well. So it's amichael@goroundtable.com. All right. I want to thank everyone for your really wonderful participation. So much love coming up through the reactions. I think that this resonated on such a deep level. It was very obvious through the chat and through the Q&A. So just thank you for that participation. Thank you again to the our panelists, Lisa, Ainsley, and Christine. You were tremendously wise and vulnerable. So appreciated that. And thank you, Glenn, as usual, for being a great hostess with the mostest. We'll be sending our recap emails. And if you do want to stay in touch, you can see the information there. That's all for today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.